November Delta 42 Anchorage Center, confirm your heading and altitude.
Anchorage Center 270, 5,000 feet, copy. Air clear, visibility excellent. It's almost too quiet up here.
Maintaining your corridor, report any deviations immediately.
Come in, Center. My instruments are acting strange. The compass is swinging 40 degrees on its own. I've never seen anything like it before.
November Delta 42, are you declaring an emergency?
There's something. Horizon. Shifting. Can't.
November Delta 42, come in. November Delta 42, acknowledge. Pilot, respond. Do you copy?
This is Creepy Crossroad, where history, horror, and the unexplained meet at the crossroads where every turn leads somewhere darker.
You've heard of the Bermuda Triangle, but up here in Alaska, there's another one way bigger, colder, and far deadlier. The Alaskan Triangle. This patch of land stretches from Anchorage in the south to Barrow in the north and Juneau in the east. Brutal wilderness, mountains that slice through the sky in endless forests, and waterways that will swallow anything that slips in. And the permafrost? Frozen ground so hard that it can keep any wreckage hidden for decades. It sounds remote, and it is, but here's the problem. More people vanish inside this space than anywhere else in the United States. Hikers, hunters, bush pilots, entire planes, by some estimates, thousands over the last 50 years. Most leave behind no distress call, no wreckage, no trail to follow, just gone. And it's not just the disappearances, it's what surrounds them. Instruments that twitch and fail, auroras that dance overhead like a warning, and conspiracies that reach from the Alaskan glaciers straight into the halls of power in Washington. The Alaska Triangle isn't just a place where people go missing, it's a place where the truth itself gets erased. Alaska Airlines Flight 1866. September 1971. A Boeing 727 lined up for approach into Juneau. The crew trusted their instruments, but those instruments lied. The jet slammed into the Chilkat Mountains, killing all 111 passengers on board. The NTSB, or the National Transportation Safety Board, blamed faulty navigation signals, but no definite cause was found. And here's the thing. Pilots had already whispered about that corridor, a place where compasses twitch, altimeters drift, and GPS can just flatline. One pilot who logged years in and out of Juneau admitted you'd be on course dead on, and suddenly your heading would swing 30 degrees for no reason. You correct, and then you're over some rock you shouldn't be anywhere near. Pan Am Flight 923, October 1947. A Douglas DC-4 plowed directly into the Tongass Mountains on Annette Island. The weather? Clear. The aircraft? Sound. Crew? Experienced. 18 souls gone in seconds. Officially, pilot error, but why would a trained crew fly a perfectly good aircraft straight into a mountain on a clear day? Some point to Cold War radar testing on Annette, others, the same story pilots keep repeating. Magnetic fields here twist your readings until you don't even know that you're off course. November 1952. A U.S. Air Force Globemaster, heavy with Cold War cargo, slammed into Mount Gannett. 52 killed instantly. Snow buried the wreckage so deep it wasn't seen again for 60 years, until pieces slid out of Colony Glacier in 2012. The cause? Poor weather. Conspiracy? The Air Force was moving sensitive material, maybe even nuclear parts. The reality? Mount Gannett is notorious for building sudden walls of fog, trapping pilots in this white death with no way out. Now let's jump up to 2013. An Alaska Central Express Flight 51, a Beechcraft 1900 cargo plane, was descending into Dillingham. The crew checked in, began their approach, and then Silence. The plane hit the Muklung Hills, both pilots dead. The official story is the pilot error in poor weather. Local story, reports of strange lights in the sky near where the crash was, spirit lights and pilots whispering about sudden geomagnetic spikes in the corridor. And then there's the ones that never left a trace. The planes that vanished without a call, a signal, or a scrap of wreckage anywhere to be found. The most famous disappearance? A man whose name shook Washington, D.C. when he just didn't come home. Now, we'll circle back to that one later. But for now, you get the picture. Different aircraft, different decades, different conditions, and every time, the official cause boils down to error, bad weather, or bad luck. But beneath those reports, there's always a shadow explanation. Cold War cover-ups, scrambled instruments, or even the land itself is fighting back. So we've covered the planes, but if crashes and disappearances are the symptoms, then we need to look at the sickness underneath. The Alaska Triangle isn't just dangerous because of the storms in the mountains. The ground itself, the very environment, is strange. Pilots talk about it constantly. Compasses that won't settle or needles that swing 30 to 40 degrees on their own. Alaska is loaded with iron-rich rock and rare earth minerals, and here's the kicker. Across the U.S., those mineral deposits usually sit buried about 82 meters below the surface, and in Alaska, they're just 8 meters deep. Now that's 10 times closer to the surface, which means that their magnetic pull has much more of a dramatic effect on navigation. Put shallow magnetic minerals and aviation together, and you've already got a nightmare in the making. And all of that is before we even bring the Aurora into play. Now layer on something cosmic. The Alaska Triangle sits directly beneath what's called an Aurora Oval. Aurora Oval. A ring-shaped zone around the magnetic poles, where the northern lights are most active. Those glowing curtains of green and purple aren't just a pretty light show. They're a visible part of a solar storm, streams of charged particles from the sun slamming into Earth's magnetic field. In the oval, those storms bend radio signals, they throw off GPS, and even cause instruments to glitch. Pilots flying beneath the Aurora can report static roaring in their headset so loud that they can't even hear their co-pilot talking back to them. Pilots flying the Fairbanks route logged instrument errors so severe that they nearly lost bearings mid-flight. I've read cockpit transcripts where you can hear the confusion as their altimeters went from steady to nonsense in seconds. It's like flying through a storm made of electricity. Then there's the weather. Everyone knows Alaska weather is brutal, but the Triangle, it makes it unpredictable. Clear skies can collapse into whiteouts in under 15 minutes. Pilots describe flying into what feels like a solid wall of fog, and that happens because the warm ocean air funnels into narrow valleys, and it smashes into downdrafts from the ice fields. The air condenses instantly, and suddenly you're flying blind. This reminds me of something that we experience in Fairbanks in the wintertime. It's called ice fog. And what that is when you're driving around and you pull up to a stoplight and it's so cold, probably between 40 to 60 below, anywhere from that frame, your exhaust can't dissipate. So all the exhaust just settles in this little area while you're trying to drive. You can't see 5 feet in front of you. So I can't even imagine. This is why I'm not a pilot for a reason. This is one of those reasons, because no. One bush pilot told investigators flying here is like trying to drive down a highway where the pavement keeps just vanishing under your tires. Another said, if you can fly in Alaska, you can fly anywhere. And that's not an exaggeration. Aviators who log serious hours here are considered higher skilled technical pilots just by default. In one accident report from the 90s, a pilot wrote in his log that a fog over Lake Iliamna was so thick that he could actually taste it, like frozen metal. Minutes later, he was gone. Stories like that rarely make it out of NTSB summaries, but among bush pilots, they're passed down almost like folklore. Here's the part that really unsettles me in this whole thing. The Triangle doesn't just hide people, it plays with their minds. Geomagnetic anomalies here can throw off compasses and scramble your equilibrium, your body's inner balance system, leaving even seasoned pilots dizzy, disoriented. Add in gas leaking from the thawing permafrost, methane, sometimes even traces of carbon monoxide, and the effects get worse. Confusion, paranoia, even hallucinations. It can trick your senses into you walking right into danger. We have these little bugs here called no-see-ums, and you can't barely see them until they're right in front of your face, and they're these tiny little freaking gnats. Ugh! Ugh, I hate them. I hate them. Whatever. But when you start pulling eyewitness reports, it gets darker. Even bush pilots describe feeling like their plane was being pulled sideways by invisible hands, even when their instruments read completely normal. Hunters talk about sudden waves of nausea, vertigo, and this eerie sense of being watched, right before someone in their party disappeared. And here's the chilling part. This isn't just folklore. It is in the records. One NTSB report from the 1990s included a pilot's radio log where he said, "My compass is spinning. I'm turning south, but it still reads north." His last words before the plane vanished off the radar. Another bush pilot interviewed years later put it even plainer. "It wasn't the weather, it was like my head stopped being my own. One minute I was steady, the next I was so dizzy I could barely tell if I was climbing or dropping." Scientists will tell you it's equilibrium. Your inner ear relies on those tiny little crystals and fluids to orient you, and when methane or arsenic leaks from permafrost or the Aurora oval bends the magnetic field overhead, your body just gets confused. It betrays you. Balance collapses, your vision swims, your thoughts blur, and for some, paranoia kicks in so strong that they walk straight into rivers, off of cliffs, or into endless forests without even realizing it. The wilderness doesn't need you to chase it here. It only needs you to tilt your senses just a little until you disappear yourself. Hunters talk about patches of land where nothing moves. Birds won't cross overhead, caribou herds just completely steer clear, and even sled dogs stop in their tracks and refuse to go forward. Now, what's happening isn't mystical, it's chemical. In some regions of the Alaska Triangle, the soil bleeds arsenic and heavy metals out of the bedrock. Jackson, you're fine. Come here. Come on. Come say hello. Mama's okay, I promise. Those toxins get sucked up by this lichen, the thick carpet-like plant that covers huge swaths of tundra. Caribou and moose depend on that lichen in the winter, but when it's laced with arsenic, it's poison. The animals know better. They avoid those patches, leaving whole stretches of the ground eerily empty. Hunters describe a silence that feels heavier than normal, like the land is warning them to stay away. Now, let's talk about permafrost. It's not just frozen dirt. It's ground that has been locked solid year-round for thousands of years. Soil, sand, rock, everything buried in it, frozen into one giant block. The problem comes when it thaws. Inside those frozen grounds are pockets of methane gas, trapped under for a millennia. Now, I could do an entire episode of what may happen if some kind of like ancient virus is exposed through permafrost that's melting, that could, like annihilate the entire world. I mean, there's that. If you're interested in that, leave a comment below and I would totally dive into that one. But when warming or shifting Earth releases the pressure, those pockets can blow, literally exploding out of the ground. In 2014, just outside of Fairbanks, a resident reported the ground collapsing with a bang. What they found was this gaping hole in the tundra, later linked to a violent methane release from thawing permafrost. Just imagine hiking across open land and finding a crater where the ground has just detonated. In Alaska, oilfield workers have their own name for it, sleeping giants. They mark them, avoid them, and pray they don't open beneath their rigs. One peak comes up again and again, Mount Hayes. Over 13,000 feet, it dominates the eastern Alaska range. Climbers report compasses spinning, radios cutting out, gear failing without warning, and almost overwhelming sense of dread. Scientists have recorded magnetic anomalies in the area, but conspiracy theorists go further, claiming Hayes hides something underground. Some say it's a natural power source, others whisper Cold War experiments, and some insist it's not even human. Whether you buy that or not, Mount Hayes is one of those places where even seasoned mountaineers admit that the land feels alive, and not in a friendly way. So maybe it's just the minerals, maybe it's methane or the Aurora oval, or weather stacking the deck against anyone who crosses this region, or maybe it's something deeper, because the triangle isn't just airspace. It's the land, the magnetics, and the very sky itself. And even if you strip out the legends, you're still left with one truth. Alaska doesn't just test pilots, it eats them alive. Earlier, we talked about crashes and missing flights, but the Alaska Triangle isn't just about metal birds falling from the sky. It's about people. On foot, by boat, or in the air, this region swallows human beings at a rate that's too hard to ignore. Let's start with the scale. The Alaska Triangle roughly covers 200,000 square miles. Within that vast space, more people go missing per year than anywhere else in the United States. By population, Alaska's missing persons rate is nearly double than any other state, even higher than Nevada or Arizona, where the deserts swallow hikers every year. Since 1988, over 16,000 people have vanished in Alaska. That's a missing persons rate twice the national average. Some are found, lost hunters, hikers who wandered off trail, planes located decades later as glaciers melt, but thousands remain gone. The locals have a phrase, the land that eats people. And if you need proof of how deep that goes, look no further than the most famous case of them all, the disappearance of Hale Boggs. Remember in the very beginning I teased you with that flight? This is it. October 16th, 1972. A twin-engine Cessna 310 lifted off from Anchorage, bound for Juneau. On board, Hale Boggs, Majority Leader of the U.S. House of Representatives. Nick Begich, Alaska's fisherman congressman. Russell Brown, a congressional aide. Don Johns, the pilot. 3.5 hours of expected flight time. Instead, radio silence. No mayday, no beacon, no wreckage. What follows was the largest search in American history up to that point. 39 military aircraft, 40 civilian planes, 3,600 flight hours logged, more than 325,000 square miles of wilderness scoured. That search was so large, people joked you couldn't drop a coin in the triangle without hitting a search plane, and yet they found nothing. Not a shred of wreckage, not a body, not even a seat cushion. Alaskan politics shifted overnight, not just because 2 men died, but because power changed hands in ways that shaped decades of history. The official explanation? The Civil Aeronautics Board pinned it on a bad weather and poor visibility. Alaska's brutal terrain makes it all too easy for a small aircraft to disappear forever. If that Cessna slammed into a glacier, it could be sealed under ice for centuries. That explanation isn't logical, but the Boggs case never sat right with the people. Because Hale Boggs wasn't just another passenger, he was one of the most powerful men in America, and he had made enemies. Here's the conspiracy layers. The FBI. Boggs was openly hostile towards J. Edgar Hoover and the Bureau. He accused the FBI of illegal wiretapping and abuse of power. Some claim Hoover wanted him gone, and Alaska's wilderness provided the perfect cover. The Warren Commission. Boggs sat on the commission investigating JFK's assassination. Later, he hinted that the report had covered things up. Critics of the commission see Boggs' disappearance as one more loose end to tie up. Watergate rumors. Boggs moved into Washington circles where early whispers of the Watergate were surfacing. Did he know too much? Or was he silenced before Nixon's scandal exploded? The pilot. Don Johns. Experienced, yes, but with a reputation for risk-taking. His license had even been suspended at one point. Officially, that fit the pilot error box, but conspiracy thinkers argue John's background made him the perfect scapegoat if somebody wanted a flight to vanish. And here's the strange part. In Alaska, even decades-lost planes are eventually found. Hunters stumble across the wreckage, hikers see a wing sticking out of the snow, glaciers spit up forgotten debris, but not here. Not a single piece of Boggs' plane has ever been found. One of Boggs' fellow congressmen told a reporter off the record that if Hale had lived another year, he would have burned Washington down. Another unconfirmed story claims that a retired bush pilot found twisted metal in Prince William Sound in the 90s, but it was warned off after reporting it. Those accounts never reached the public archives, just whispers in the aviation bars. Boggs' disappearance reshaped the political landscape. Nick Begich's widow, Peggy, later ran for office. Their son, Mark Begich, became a U.S. Senator. Hale Boggs' daughter became one of America's most respected journalists. But Boggs himself, he had never been groomed for a higher office. Speaker of the House was in reach, maybe even a run at the White House. Instead, he was erased, swallowed whole by Alaska. Even today, memorial service for Boggs and Begich draw old-timers who still swear the truth never came out. In Fairbanks and Anchorage, you'll hear versions that sounds less like aviation accidents and more like political assassinations. One retired Alaska State Trooper admitted flatly, "Planes don't vanish here without a trace, not unless somebody wants them to." So was it weather or just another Alaskan tragedy sealed in ice? Or was it something darker, political silencing hidden behind the perfect cover of wilderness? What we know is this. On October 16, 1972, a man third in line for the presidency boarded a plane in Anchorage and was never seen again. If the triangle can erase someone that powerful, then maybe nobody's really safe out there. Don't forget to subscribe, tap that bell so you don't miss the next crossing, and share with anyone who thinks Alaska is just mountains and moose. But until next time, stay creepy.